What's the best way you've seen someone rebel against school rules? When I was in high school, there was a rule implemented that if you showed up late to school, you had to go to the front office to get a detention slip. You would then have to give it to the teacher for that period, who would then mark it down, and you were required to go to lunch detention for that day. I figured out by the third slip that literally no one cared, teachers, security, or students. So when I was subsequently late for the rest of the year, I would take out an old slip that I had from a previous detention, walk through school, give it to my teacher to mark down, then take it back to give to the lunch detention supervisor. But I never went to detention because the front office didn't have record of me being late. I was late no less than 50 times my senior year, only having been reprimanded the initial 3 times. I even told my parents about it after I had graduated, and even they agreed it was dumb and funny. Back in the 1980s there was one kid in my school, was hardcore into the punk scene. Had a bright blue, 6 inches high, razor thin stand up straight mohawk. The principal gave him detention for being a distraction, etc. and his parting words that day were "and tomorrow, no more blue mohawk." The next day the kid came in with the same mohawk, only bright pink. Senior year, my school banned jackets. A friend was cold, wore his jacket to lunch, and the VP told him to take it off. Friend pulls out the student handbook and asked where it said he couldn't wear it. VP flips for a while and ends up showing him the "or anything the administration seems disruptive" clause. Friend rolls his eyes, but takes off his coat. The next day, friend comes in with the same tweed sport coat the VP wore every day. We had a French teacher who was really bad and most people barely tolerated. It happened a few times that whoever arrived first would stand outside her door, as if waiting for her to show up and unlock it, and the rest of the class would just queue up behind them pretending to believe them. Meanwhile the teacher would just be sitting inside wondering where her class was. In 11th grade, now 30 years ago, we were told to use Memorial Day as a weather makeup day from Hurricane Hugo. Us students, and many teachers, felt this was disrespectful and suggested to just add the day to the end of the school year. The state insisted. Very few people showed up for school including me, my brother, and most of the faculty. In my private school boys were required to wear a collared shirt. It really wasn't enforced until one day it was. I was wearing a sweater without a collared shirt underneath, and I had to go back to the dorm and change. I argued that I didn't look ratty or underdressed at all, but they said rules were rules. The next day I wore a white t-shirt with a collar cut off from one of my older shirts, stapled to it. It looked terrible, but rules are rules. Guy was wearing shoes against the uniform policy and was asked to put on shoes from lost property. He went around school barefoot all day. After 9/11 my school made a rule where we had to wear our school aids. They went overboard quick handing out detention to anyone who didn't wear one. One kid had his ID blown up and put on a shirt. On the back it said "Yes, I'm wearing my ducking ID." He got detention for not wearing it with the shirt. It wasn't a big defiant act or anything, but I loved it and it always stuck with me. One day in high school, we had a particularly hard snow. We were certain school would be cancelled, but womp womp. No dice. No one was allowed to leave the building during lunch. But a bunch of kids said duck it that day and ran outside to have a big ol' snowball fight. We all watched as they had an awesome time, and a couple of randos joined in. I was too chicken shit. They all got detention, but I know it was worth it. It was so simple and harmless, and I remember it almost 15 years later. I was at a private school that had rules about the length of boys' hair. One guy in particular always ignored the rule and the administration would tell him to get a haircut every so often, but he never did. Eventually when his hair got about down to his shoulders the principal pulled him aside and told him his hair was twice the allowed length and by next week it needed to be shortened by half. Monday rolls around and he comes in with half his head shaved and the other side as long as ever. We were impressed by literal interpretation of the principal's request, but it still ended up with him getting a suspension for a week and he had to shave the other side before he could come back. When I was in grade 7, our last class of the day, students would always bring in snacks. Our lunch shift was way too early in the day, so by the end of the school day we'd all be feeling hungry. and we were all told by our teacher that if we didn't have enough to share we couldn't eat in the classroom. One day, almost all of us brought in enough food to share, even with the students that didn't bring anything in. We even synchronized the times that we pulled all our food out. Our teacher was clueless. She had no idea what to tell us. There wasn't any school-wide no food in classrooms rule, so she couldn't run to the principal. Finally she gave in to our malicious compliance and allowed us to share food for the rest of the period. My daughters both went to a Catholic high school. My younger one had a bit of a wild streak. The girls were required to wear a skirt every day to school. My daughter did not care for this rule and wore her skirt around her head one day since the dress code required the students to wear a skirt, just not wear. I was told that she was wearing spandex underneath. That's how my daughter got a new rule in her high school dress code. I was in a Christian high school at the time. The day before winter break rolls around, and I had packed a few Toblerone chocolate bars and some notes for the teachers I most appreciated, with the intention of leaving them as a Christmas gift. Before school the principal made a public announcement that students were not to give any teachers any gifts, unless we were going to give all teachers the same gift. This was obviously a bit of a problem, since I couldn't exactly come back the next day with additional candy bars, so I marched into her office to address this issue. Upon entering the office I made a show of opening a chocolate bar and breaking off exactly one piece and placing it on her desk. I told her that I was going to give her a full candy bar, but I now had to share her chocolate bar with other teachers that I didn't really care so much about anyways. That rule was quietly lifted. Hey Joe, aren't you supposed to be in class? Yeah. One word. Doesn't look like much in text, but he said it's such full acceptance and resolution that the teacher didn't follow up or say anything else. Just, okay, got it, you're not going, I'll move on and not waste any more time here. And they kept walking. Sometimes attitude is everything. Sometimes you can say a lot with a single word. A kid was passing notes and the teacher caught him and insisted he had to give the note so she could read it out loud. He ate the note. I can only imagine what it said, that he felt the need to eat it lol. Friend was told in high school by his guidance counselor not to waste his time applying to his dream school because he wouldn't get in. He got pissed off and went to the principal, who told him it was the counselor's job to give her best opinion, so he trusts whatever she says. He applied anyways and got in. He took the acceptance letter, made a copy, and taped them to both the principal and counselor's door with thanks for nothing written on both. He didn't even go to that school, he couldn't afford it, but it was the principle of the matter. Last day of senior year, we started a food fight at lunch. And by food fight, I mean we drew angry faces on an orange and an apple, then faced them toward each other, made a big circle around them, and we all reacted like we were watching a fight. All the security guards ran to break up the fight, only to make their way to the middle of the circle to find two pieces of fruit sitting on the ground. Edit. Lots of comments about security guards and schools. In the USA it's just so common I don't even think about its bizarreness anymore. In many states here, schools not only have a security guard, but a police officer as well. The canteen stopped selling sachets of red sauce due to the mess some kids were making. My friend carried a huge bottle of red sauce in his bag for at least a month and provided illegal red sauce for the cost of 5p per squirt made a fortune. One of my classmates got sent to the office for wearing gang colors because he has a red Marine Corps bandana tied to his backpack. The rest of the year he wore a pinstripe suit with vest and carried a fedora. No hats in school. In high school junior year, there was this one kid in my grade that was allowed to due to him having alopecia universalis, which is basically having rapid baldness. A new teacher wasn't aware that he was allowed to and asked him to take it off. The kid explained why he was able to, but the sub didn't believe him, forced him to take it off, and was being very cruel to him for wearing the hat / his lack of hair. The next day, everyone wore hats to school as a sort of rebellion against the teacher. She got really mad and started yelling at the students and said some nasty things. She got fired. Last year our school fetched in a ban on backpacks and bags in general since they were apparently a safety hazard. 2 days later some guy in my year group comes in carrying his books and pencil case in a microwave. Dude made national news. Akers said boys need their shirts tucked in. Never said how much needs to be tucked in. So when one of my friends got told to tuck in his shirt, he stood still, used one finger, and tucked in a tiny portion of the back of his shirt into his pants, then walked off. Was later called to the office because they thought he was acting out and not obeying rules, but the kid's parents said that he followed the rule. It never said the whole shirt needs to be tucked in. So the principal, secretary, and teacher all have to let the kid off. The next day, the principal makes an announcement to the whole school that boys need to have their entire shirt tucked in the entire way. We laughed about it. Someone should have taken off their entire shirt and put it in their pants. This Josh kid I knew had to take a shit, asked if he could go to the bathroom, and the teacher wouldn't allow him a hall pass in high school, which is the dumbest fucking thing ever invented anyway. So he got up, walked to the front of the room and shit his pants in front of the class, then blamed the teacher for it. Best story in this entire chain. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.